Hey there, everyone. Ted Lacksonen, the country thinker here, back with another exciting episode of The Eagle Has Crashed. This week we're going to finish up September of 2029. Before I get started, I wanted to mention something about last week's episode. You may have recognized a couple of the names of some of the minor characters, such as Paul O'Neill and Henry Paulson, and if you know your Bush-era politics, those were both Treasury secretaries under George W. Bush. And just as a little bit of dorky humor, that's something I did throughout. Not just Bush-era Treasury secretaries, but from a number of administrations, I used their names for relatively minor characters. Starting off this week, we're going to go to Washington and see whether or not the Republicans and Democrats can get together and work out some kind of a deal to handle the brewing economic crisis that the country is facing. So, all right, let's get to the story. Senator Joan Morris of Missouri entered the Oval Office and passed Chief of Staff Pirelli, who stood stone-faced and with his arms crossed like a bouncer at a nightclub. House Speaker Frank Baston followed behind and scowled at the former hockey defenseman as he passed. "I don't like you, Baston," Pirelli growled. "Feelings mutual, thug," Baston snapped with a smirk. President Maynard sat at his desk with his hands behind his head and his feet on his desk. Treasury Secretary Waters was at his usual post on the front left corner of the president's desk, smirking. His green eyes tracked the Republicans as they entered. In front of Waters sat Congresswoman Burks with her arms folded in her lap. She did not respond to the arrival of her political rivals. Next to her, the tall, lanky Senator Caldwell stood and greeted them as they approached the president's desk. "Good afternoon, Joan," he said with a smile and a nod. "Good afternoon, Bernie," Morris said with a smile as she passed the genteel Carolinian and shook hands with Oscar Davidson, the first African-American vice president, who greeted her with a smile and a nod. The former University of Georgia linebacker was an imposing physical figure, but he was a gentleman politician like Senator Caldwell. Although Davidson was known as a foreign policy expert, Maynard wanted his presence at the meeting to give the Democrats even greater numbers. Morris took his seat across a small gap from Caldwell's. Baston nodded to the senator and vice president, passed in front of Morris, and took a seat to her left. Once the legislators were seated, Maynard put his feet on the floor and his hands in his lap. "Okay, Senator Morris, let's get down to business. Can we count on your support for our compromise proposal? Your idea will take care of the short-term budget problems, but will worsen the long-term situation. The compromise buys us time, nothing more. Consequently, my support is contingent on substantial cuts as a part of any deal." Congresswoman Burks leaned forward and looked at Senator Morris. "Budget cuts? Now? That's absolutely crazy." She looked over to Congressman Baston. "Unless, of course, they're to the defense budget." Baston put his hands on the side of his face and was about to explode when President Maynard gestured "stop" with his right hand. "As I told you at our last meeting, Frank, I agree with you that defense cuts would be imprudent. I am the commander-in-chief, and it's my responsibility to keep America safe. Sorry, Sandy, but I'm with him on this one." Burks frowned, crossed her arms, and slid back in her seat. Baston smiled. "Before we get into the meat of the discussion, Mr. President, let me tell you about some of the things I've been hearing at my office. I had an 80-year-old woman, a constituent of mine, call my office and give one of my staffers an earful with language colorful enough to make a sailor blush. And you know why? Because her Social Security checks haven't been showing up." Treasury Secretary Waters raised his hand. "It's a computer glitch, Mr. Baston. I'm sure you've heard it on the news. We're on top of it, and you can assure your constituents that every penny will arrive soon enough." "That's bullshit, and you know it, Mr. Secretary." "Relax, Frank," the president said, holding up his hands. "Ben has it under control." "If I may, Mr. President," Senator Morris interjected as Baston continued to scowl. "Yes, of course." "Let me frame the debate as clearly as possible. You're taking spending cuts off the table because you think that will hurt the economy." Senator Morris tapped her left palm with her right index finger. "We won't agree to tax increases for the same reason. The only thing left is your compromise proposal." She scratched her eyebrow. "Which only delays the tough choices." The president nodded. "I think you've summed it up pretty well. So what do you say?" "No," Morris said, shaking her head. I think we have a golden opportunity to make serious permanent budget cuts that will set us on a sustainable fiscal path. I'm also going to say that this compromise is," Morris breathed deeply and exhaled, "crazy." Senator Caldwell folded his fingers together. "It's anything but crazy, Joan. You're usually a reasonable woman, but I think you're being harsh." "I disagree," she said, and her curly hair bounced as she shook her head. "The public is going to go ballistic. Spending cuts are the only solution to the problem." The president held up his hands. "Okay, I can see that we're not going to get any support from the Republican leadership on this one. Let me just say that I'm quite disappointed at your stubbornness. I'd really hoped that we wouldn't have to go it alone on this one." He shook his finger in the air. "The public will be none too happy with the GOP when they learn you dug in your heels." Senator Morris put her left arm across Congressman Baston's chest to make sure he remained seated. "Mr. President, I think it would be poor politics to portray the situation that way. By taking any discussion of spending cuts off the table, I think it is Democrats who are being stubborn. I'm certain the public is going to say, 'Why didn't we do what the Republicans suggested?'" Pirelli leaned forward and put his face close to hers. "Oh, no, they won't," he said. "I'll make sure of that." Senator Morris's jaw dropped and she turned to the president. "Mr. President, call off the guard dog, please. Don't you dare let him slander us in the media." The president shrugged his shoulders. "Get on board with the compromise and we can all get our pictures taken together." "Forget it," Senator Morris replied. "Let's face it," Congresswoman Burke said. "This is just another example of Republicans using a crisis to advance their agenda at the expense of everyone else. While America is going broke, the GOP sees a chance to put politics ahead of the public." She shook her head. "So typical." Congressman Baston laughed. "Man, you Democrats are obnoxious. But let me ask you a practical question. Exactly how are you going to pass it without us?" "I only need to get 4 Republicans from the House," Burks interjected. "That won't be difficult. You aren't exactly the most popular speaker we've ever had." "I'll throw in a little bit of my Rhode Island charm," the chief of staff added. He punched his open palm. "I'm frightened," Baston said with a snarky grin. "And trust me, Burks, your own folks in the House don't think you're such a sweetheart. I can get more no votes from the Dems than you can get from yeses from Republicans. Count on it." Senator Morris held out her palms. "Then I guess we all know where we stand. I guess we're back to business as usual." Morris turned to the president. "And if I get our spending cuts passed, would you veto?" "I haven't seen your bill yet. If it's inconsistent with prudent economic policies in a difficult time, I would owe it to the people to do so." "I'll take that as a yes," Senator Morris said. Maynard smiled, then slapped the desk with his hands. "Well, I guess it's horse trading time." At a dingy diner, Kevin Davis sat in a booth with one arm across the top of a black vinyl bench seat as he spun a metal butter knife on the laminated wood table with his free hand. A muscular black man in his early 20s and wearing a security officer uniform sat across from him, leaning on the table and clutching a white ceramic coffee mug with both hands. The security guard had a squinting, perplexed expression. "So let me get this straight, Kevin. You want me to let you into Green Wing Industries for an hour in the middle of the night. You're not going to take anything. You're not going to break anything. You're not even going to move anything. You're just going to leave something, but you can't tell me what it is, even though you say it won't hurt anyone. As a matter of fact, you say it's going to help people." He shook his head and laughed. "Greg, I don't want you to let me in. I just want you to stay in the offices for an hour. I can get in and out without damaging anything." The security guard shook his head. "You're going to get me fired, man. That ain't worth 10 grand, especially with jobs so hard to come by." Davis stopped spinning the knife and leaned forward with his hands in his lap. "That's why my boss is guaranteeing you 2 years' salary if you lose your job over this. Cash up front, no taxes, no strings attached." "Whatever it is you union guys are up to must be awful important." Kevin pushed his bangs to the side with his left hand. "You're damn right it is. The future of the country depends on it." He leaned back and put his hands behind his head. "So what do you say?" Greg looked down as if to divine an answer from the black liquid in his mug. "I don't know, man. Green Wing Industries is a pretty good gig for a security guard. Can you give me a day or two to think about it?" Kevin smiled. "Yeah, sure. Just remember, though, this is for the country. Trust me. Clad in a light gray skirt suit and ruffled blouse, Grace Mercer pushed through the squeaking screen door of the house where she rented an apartment and onto the broad porch with chipping white paint. Her schnauzer, Mr. Fluffy, trotted behind, with slack in the thin leather leash as the woman turned to the exterior wall under the shaded porch. There were 4 flat, rectangular metal mailboxes speckled with rust on the outside wall. 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. She flipped up the lid to 2A and pulled out a small stack of mail. 0% interest for 6 months. Get the carpet of 2 rooms shampooed for free. Bad credit? No problem. We can get you into a new Ford at Central Ohio's largest car dealer. She flipped through the mail twice and then sighed. No Social Security check. What's the matter, Miss Mercer? The schnauzer barked and the old woman jumped. She looked at the open window to the left of the mailboxes and saw a 12-year-old girl resting with her chin in her palms and her elbows on the sill. Mercer placed a hand on her chest, and the schnauzer wagged his tail frenetically as it darted toward the girl. Good afternoon, Mr. Fluffy, the girl said, trying to scratch his ears as the dog licked her hand. You gave me a fright, Gabby, Mercer said. You shouldn't startle an old lady like that. I'm sorry, Miss Mercer. I thought you saw me. You look kind of sad. Were you expecting something in the mail? The old woman sighed. Yes. Well, no. Not really expecting, just hoping. What? Mercer smiled. It's nothing for a pretty young thing like you to worry about. Tell me, Gabby, how's your mama doing? I haven't seen her for days. Mama? Oh, she's fine. Just busy, that's all. Mercer shook her head. Busy. Everybody's busy. Except an old lady, of course. And Mr. Fluffy. No, he's too busy, too, trying to find a sucker to scratch his ears. Gabby giggled. I guess I'm busy being a sucker, she said as she vigorously scratched the dog with both hands. Now, Gabby, Mercer said, shaking her finger, I want you to know I worry about you and your mama. I pray for both of you every morning and every night. Aw, that's really sweet, Miss Mercer. I'm going to pray for you, too. Mercer smiled. There ain't no need to trouble God with that. Sure there is, Gabby said. I'm going to ask him to tell the mailman to deliver whatever it was you were looking for. Mercer smiled and went back into the apartment house and climbed the creaky oak stairs with her schnauzer following closely behind. She turned her key in the door and opened it, and her 4-legged protector charged forward to ensure that everything was safe in the tiny 1-bedroom apartment. Mercer walked over to an antique secretary's table and sat down at the chair. She pulled out a pad of paper and a ballpoint pen from the drawer. September 30, 2029. Dear Mr. President, I know you are a busy man, but I want you to know that I was supposed to get my Social Security check 5 weeks ago, and it has not arrived. I talked to the postman, but he said he has not seen it. I know a Social Security check is a little thing, but it means a lot to me. I need it to pay my rent, and with winter coming, I will need it to heat my apartment and for my electricity and so forth. I'm sorry to be such a bother, but if you could see where my check has gone, I would be very thankful. I have talked to several other folks at church, and they got the same problem. Some say there's a lot of arguing going on in Washington, but I wouldn't know about that sort of thing. All I know is I need my Social Security check to get by. Please, Mr. President, do something. Christ be with you. Grace Mercer. And so ends September of 2029 of The Eagle Has Crashed, and naturally next week we will move on to October. If you're enjoying this and would like to purchase a copy of the book in either paperback or ebook format, you can get it at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, from my publisher website, ClearPeakPress.com, from the Sony Store, the iTunes Store, Smashwords, and other retailers. So have a great week, and we'll get back to the story next Sunday.